Good evening, everyone. Glad to see your faces here. Thank you for coming. This is a special meeting of the City Council. It is Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. It's 6 p.m. and I'll call this meeting to order now and call for a quorum check, please.
Mayor Pinello.
Aye.
Councilmember Love.
Here.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Here.
Councilmember Karian.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Present.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Here.
Quorum is here. We shall proceed. Before we move on to our next item, we do have a short invocation and a pledge afterwards, which we had not included in the original agenda, but I think it's appropriate to do this. So Ms. Turner's going to do the invocation, and I'll do the pledge. So everyone, please stand.
Let us pray. Lord, we bless your holy name, and we forget not the gifts that you have given us. You who pardons all sins, heals all ills, redeems our lives from the pit. You who crowns us with mercy and compassion, and fills our day with good things, and renews us each day. Help us, Lord, to walk without blame and to do what is right. Send forth your Spirit to guide us. May your glory endure forever, and may we abound in hope in the power of your Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, for attending this evening. This is obviously a special meeting to discuss the venue tax projects and some options that are available to us this evening. We'll conduct it very similar to a regular council meeting. That'll open up for citizens to be heard first, and then we'll have presentations, and it opens up for discussion for council. No action will be taken this evening. This is purely a discussion item, but it's of unique importance, I think, for our city now and into the future. So that's why we call it a special meeting to have this workshop this evening. So I don't have the roster. Do we have a list of those that have signed up? Hang on, we'll get that list, and I'll give you an opportunity to address us if you had not signed up as well. So no problem. Okay, there have been 8 people that have signed up this evening, so I'll call you up in order that you signed in this evening, and then I'll give everybody else the option if they had not had a chance to sign in. So the first person signed up this evening is Ms. Kim Eichelhart. Ma'am, again, when you come up here, please give us your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, my name is Kim Eichelhart. I live at 736 Lion Drive. Every year, we give the golf course a fixed percentage of sales tax revenue, regardless of its actual use, unable to redirect any part of it to pressing infrastructure and safety needs. Because it is a percentage rather than a fixed amount, and because our retail economy has been so successful, the yearly amount has increased substantially since the inception of the venue tax, much more so than the annual rate of inflation. This ready availability of ever-increasing public funding year after year has resulted in typical spending patterns that ignore fiscal responsibility. The time is long overdue to require the golf course to develop and implement a business plan that will result in its success. The best way to do this is to get less tax-based funding each year, not more. However, we cannot control the amount of money the golf course receives if we continue to venue tax. Therefore, I'm asking you to support a ballot proposition that will eliminate the venue tax 1%, and create a dedicated street maintenance tax in the amount of 1%. Furthermore, I'm calling for the creation of an actual street maintenance program with full transparency and accountability. We have a Parks Master Plan available online. Why not streets? As far behind as we are, there should always be multiple streets under construction. If Randy is spread too thin, then something needs to change. This is something the city manager needs to evaluate and addressed. All I know is that last year, shortly before elections, council authorized the spending of the remaining money from the previous street bond package. Although that was a year ago, I don't believe these projects are yet underway. While I know going out for bids takes time, one would think it would be mostly boilerplate language and should not take a year to draft. As I have said before on the record, our streets are in a deplorable condition, and the recently approved $30 million street bond package isn't nearly enough money to make the needed repairs. 100 streets that have been in need of repair since 2008, 15 years ago. However, it really does not matter how much money we authorize for repairs if the work is not being performed in an expeditious manner. Please, we can do better. We got to. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate your comments. Next individual signed this evening, Ms. Ashton Bowman.
Ashton Bowman, 12807 El Dorado. Since we're doing the presentation tonight, I was kind of hoping to hold my comments until after the presentation. That way we knew what the city was putting forth and what options were going to be discussed, and that way citizens could have an input on those exact discussions tonight as opposed to waiting for it to go on the agenda. But since that can't happen, I'm just going to firmly state the position that I've already stated a million times to all of you gentlemen, is that I firmly believe that the citizens should get to vote whether they want to continue to fund the golf course with the venue tax or not. I think you guys should really consider the citizens when you're thinking about this. I have walked and talked to so many people, and I feel like a giant group of people who don't show up at these meetings are paying attention, and they do care. Just because they're not here doesn't mean that they don't care and that they don't want to be heard. It's just not everyone has the time to be at all of these meetings. I think that the citizens should really get to vote on this instead of just you guys deciding that everyone should continue to fund this. I really think we should take into consideration letting them vote. If the city votes and they decide that they want this venue tax to go to the golf course, wonderful. That's what the city has spoken, and they've decided that's what they want to do. But I don't believe it should be put in the city's hands. I believe it should be put in the citizens' hands, that they should get to decide what they want to do. So I'm hoping that you guys will consider that tonight when you guys are going through all of the options.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate that. All right. Next individual signed up this evening is Christina, is it, Fitzpatrick, yes. You just didn't spell out the whole name. Okay.
Hi, Christina Fitzpatrick at 206 Quail Drive. I really appreciate the fact that this meeting was scheduled. The venue tax has been a heavily debated topic. This is a great chance for everyone here just to listen and to learn. To learn the history of the venue tax, to the opposing opinions, and to the options that our city has with these funds, with guidance from council. But I think the one thing that is really important is the fact that we really still technically have time. There's not a looming deadline to take immediate action. We have until August if we choose to get it onto the ballot. So there's time just to take a pause. Council, you have time. Most people in this room walked in with an opinion, and after this meeting, hopefully we all walk out with new information and perhaps an understanding of people's different perspectives. Our city and council will always have money for streets and emergency services. This has been a priority in the past and will remain so in the future for the city. Our streets are funded. Emergency services are funded. An important consideration about the city streets is really the work will never be done. There will always be streets that need to be repaired. Even with normal wear and tear, they're going to continue to evolve, and that doesn't take into a catastrophic accident like a sinkhole or something like that that impacts our secondary streets. As citizens, we may wish for more transparency related to the street priorities or conditions, but we also know that each year work is being done to repair our streets. The venue tax is an opportunity to earmark money to benefit specific parts of our community that provide value to our citizens and potentially to attract visitors. Visitors that spend money and generate tax revenue. In 5 years, the council could have spent this pool of money on our streets, or they could have voted to direct it towards developing and improving areas that help market University City as a great place to live, work, and visit. I ask that each of you take the time to be thoughtful in your consideration of the options that are going to be in front of you tonight and going forward at future meetings. Each of you was elected to make decisions that position Universal City in a solid manner, both now and in the future.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, next individual signed up this evening is Ms. Carol Butler. Butler?
Mayor, Council, my name is Carol Butler, I live at 501 Kimberly Drive. You know, I usually don't talk in a forum like this, it takes a lot sometimes to talk around wonderful people. And, I realize today, you've seen me here before, and I just pray that the Lord would just make me say the right things. That's the most important thing. I'll be honest, I see things on next door. People are being ugly. I don't care if you're from the golf course, you don't like the golf course, I don't care. That's not it. So I want you to know where I stand. I don't mind the golf course. My son, I told you the last time, he loves the golf course. He's a businessman now. And I started thinking today, what is it about this golf course? Why has it caused such a rift in our community? And I came up with the answer, which you all know what. And it's because we have made this golf course, it's a business. And we're treating it like an individual that's on welfare. We live in the United States of America. We all came from people who came over on a boat or a ship or a train or something. And they came here because this is a free enterprise place. Work hard. All of my people did. I have people for my great-great-grandparents living here, working hard, trying to make something of themselves. I worked hard. Maybe y'all don't think I made anything on myself, but I did my best. I didn't ask for anything. Worked hard. Took care of my family. Took care of my mother when she was ill. My father, my brother, everybody. I don't take welfare, but we have made the golf course. What have they had? They have not had this idea that they have to work hard. They have their hand up every year. What incentive do they have to work hard and make the golf course work for all the people? The golf course is fine. It doesn't matter. But you can't keep giving money to them. How many? I've heard 17 to $30 million. I don't care. It's too much money. You've taken the pride away from the people who are working in the golf course. Like you and you and you and you have all worked very hard. I know. You're wonderful people. None of them are elected by the people who have entrusted you with a very big decision. I'm saying, and we're not through. We still pay for those gold cards. Because that, when I hear people say, well, they're all self-sufficient, they're not self-sufficient. You're going to keep having to pay for it. Make a decision. This is what you guys have been elected for. You're amazing. And I thank you personally for all you have done for each and every one of you. I thank you for listening to me. It's hard. It's just real hard. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it very much. Okay, next individual this evening, Mr. Ken Mitz.
Good evening. Ken Mitz, live at 13410 Adonis. And bear with me while I read this. There's a lot of facts. I just want to make sure that everybody, especially those in the audience, have a background before you all start to debate what to do with the venue tax. Last year, the city was required by law to give the golf course over $1.6 million of its sales tax revenues due to a 2002 voter-approved measure which requires the city to dedicate to the golf course 25% of its annual sales tax revenues. Since the passage of this venue tax, the city has given over $17 million of sales tax revenues to the golf course. Remember, the city marketed the 1997 bond vote to construct the golf course by saying the course would be a moneymaker for the city. Some history leading up to today's workshop is as follows. In 1993, ad valorem bond vote for $6.6 million to construct the golf course was defeated 920 to 1,037 against. 1997, the bond vote for $7.3 million to build a golf course was approved. Votes for 1,076 against 839. In 2002, the city council placed on the ballot measure whether residents usually wanted the city to dedicate 25% of its sales tax revenues to the golf course. These are revenues that must be given to the golf course and can't be used for any other purposes. Remember, the golf course was supposed to be a moneymaker for the city. Obviously, in 2002, the city council realized the golf course could not survive financially on its own revenues, so they proposed a venue tax. The residents approved this measure, voted for 316 against 141. Note the low turnout for this vote. In summary, the city went from saying the course only needed $6.6 million in '93 to needing $7.3 million in '97 to, in 2002, giving the course a permanent stream of money with passage of a voter-approved venue tax, requiring the city to dedicate 25% of its sales tax revenues to the golf course. To date, the amount of money the city has given to the golf course is well over $24 million. Over 17 million of those funds have come from the city's sales tax revenues. Had the city not dedicated all those funds to the golf course, they may not have had to ask the voters this year to approve the issuance of a bond of $30 million to acquire funds to improve the streets and use of the city. It's notable that during a January 25th, 2005 city council meeting, Mayor Pro Tem Williams made a motion to allow the city manager to pursue the lease for sale of the golf course. He knew that the golf course was a financial mistake. The motion passed, the city found no takers to buy or lease the golf course. During the same meeting, the council approved giving the course $219,000 to repair the conference center. This above the venue tax money that was already provided to the golf course. It's time to give the residents another opportunity to vote on the venue tax, but only after full and accurate disclosure of all the money given to the golf course, along with current and accurate financial statements regarding the operations of the golf course. This information should be presented to the residents and usually prior to the next venue tax vote. Continuing to pump millions of dollars into the golf course without current voter approval is a failure, in my opinion, of the council's fiduciary responsibility to the residents of Universal City. This is not about keeping or getting rid of the golf course. It's about a way in which the city continues to fund the golf course. What if the golf course becomes a cash cow it was promised to be back in '97? It no longer needs a venue tax, but because it's law, they're going to continue to get.
Mr. Mitch, you need to wrap it up, sir, please.
I think that's when they need to go ahead and put it in the annual budget process. Recommendation for this is for the city council to put forward a resident vote measure for the city residents if they want to continue to dedicate 25% of city sales tax revenue to the golf course each year. Please do not put a vote of reduced amount of venue tax funding. That will only put the responsibility to eliminate venue tax on future city councils and would require another city vote on venue tax funding for the golf course. Do what's in the best interest of most of the residents of Universal City. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Metz. Next individual this evening, Ms. Diane Woods.
Diane Woods, 13415, Musings. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. I know this is about the venue tax, but first let me say, I like having the golf and event center and don't want it to go away. However, the purpose of the venue tax, which was approved by the citizens of this city, has been met. It should not be directed to another purpose without a new vote by the citizens. Personally, I think it should go back into the annual budget process. This will allow the city council, who are elected by the citizens, to determine the best current need for the funds. Needs change, and the council should have the resources to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it very much. Next individual, Mr. Bernard Rubal. Mr. Rubal.
Council members, Bernie Rupel, 635 Ballot Drive, Universal City. We've been here before. Actually, we've been here, well, at least some of us, the mayor, and even our city manager in a different hat. We've been here before in 2005, where we just said, well, just a little bit more, just a little bit more. We've been here before, a group of us, where I stood before you in 2001 saying, where's the business plan for the golf course? Where's the business plan for the golf course? The question isn't venue tax per se, it's essentially the tax burden that gets shifted to the people and they get shorted every time. Okay, so basically $30 million in a bond, $18 million in venue tax. Okay, so basically $18 million in venue tax that isn't going to the infrastructure needs of our city. Means that Mr. Neville and I will not be around to see the streets reconstructed. It's 20 years. It's 20 years away. Okay, we need, even identified in 2005 by this council, we need the infrastructure repair. Okay, we need to focus on infrastructure. We want you to put our needs before our wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rubel. Appreciate it. Last individual that signed up this evening is Dwayne Ryan.
Dwayne Ryan, 107 Middle Circle. So there isn't a whole lot of new things that I'm going to say that hasn't already been said, but that's okay because that means that we're all kind of on the same page. Really, the golf course, it's a business, right? If it fails, let it fail. If it succeeds, great, let it succeed. If we're going to invest in something and it's not succeeding, then you either sell it off or let it fail. It's pretty straightforward. So, if there's no a business plan for the golf course to succeed, and we've given it plenty of time, then it just needs to be able to fail. Just like Ms. Butler says, this is capitalism here. If you can't survive on your own merits, then it's not right to allow to make the rest of the city subsidize that for you. So, and then to reiterate what we were saying before is that, for however long we've been doing this, here's this extra tax that we're using to subsidize this. Now that that is no longer necessary, the law doesn't say that we have to do that anymore. What are we going to do with that tax? As far as I'm concerned, that tax is over. It's done. We shouldn't even have that money anymore. Meaning, give the taxes back to, it's not give it back, but stop the taxing. We can use that money, right? If we need to, and then bring the citizens back in when we find something that we do want to spend it on. Don't just keep collecting money and then go find a place to put it. That's bad business too, right? You don't go after the money until you need the money. So identify what that need is, bring the citizens in, and we'll vote on it like we did before, especially on big things like this. So I guess that's all I got to say is, give the money back. When we find out what it is we want to spend the money on, we do another vote on it, and citizens can be heard. You guys can recommend, talk about it, recommend, have all these ideas, and then go, hey, we want to spend this huge chunk of money. What do you citizens think about that? Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. That's why we're here tonight. Thank you for coming. Did anyone else want to address council that didn't get a chance to sign up? Please, Mr. Maxwell.
I apologize, I forgot to sign up. Tom Maxwell, 1251 to Terrell University. You guys got a big decision to make tonight, a lot of choices. The other thing I want to say is that every person sitting up there, at some point in time, in years of mine, has received a vote from me to sit here. That means that we voted for you to make these types of decisions without going to a tough vote. You have all the information to make a decision of what is best for the city, beautiful city, and 20,000+ citizens that is represented by about 50 people here. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Maxwell. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ryan, 107 Oak Circle. I disagree respectfully that this is a big decision, so it should go to a vote to the state. Just because this room is filled, maybe it's because of the size of the room, not the number of seats that are filled in it. If it was a bigger room, we would have filled it on previous occasions for different things that have come up, but it's not that big a room. It's like church, when it's 80% full, people stop going. Secondly, I echo Ashton's comments that it's very hard to comment previous to a meeting's discussion, so I don't even know what to actually agree or disagree with that you're about to talk about. I really am frustrated by the process, and I feel like just because it's in the books written to be done this week, it could be changed. We would love to be able to hear what you have to say and then be able to get up and say, we don't really agree with that idea, or we really love this idea. Nobody even thought about that. But we can't do that because we're talking now completely blind, which makes zero sense to hopefully a lot of people, and hopefully to y'all. Lastly, we're not anti-golf course, we're anti-tax subsidization. So let's, we're not anti-golf course. You know, if it can succeed, fine. It hasn't shown to, so let's take that as a great deep consideration. And lastly, what I would like to hear from you tonight is what is this process going to look like? Other than tonight, this workshop, is this it? Is this your only time to discuss? Do we get another chance to come before you? What is the process between now and a final decision going to look like? Thank you.
Thanks, ma'am. Anybody else? Okay. All right, so let's move on then to conduct the actual workshop, present and discuss the venue tax projects and options. I will ask staff, would they please hand out copies of what is before council now? So you can all have a copy of what we're going to be discussing tonight.
Yeah, Council Mayor, we recognize that the screens all over large screens up there, sometimes it's hard for people to see. Also, I have some people I'm looking at to make sure we have good volume control. I will start, it kind of looks like a CNN press room in here, or whatever station we're trying to watch. We follow the cameras. I will just say, we are getting ready for our PEG channel, so we're staff is testing 4 different cameras this evening to see which ones provide better sound quality. So anyone wonder about and I look in the audience, can you all hear fine?
While they're passing out, let me just give you some of the ground rules here. That this evening is a discussion only. There is no action taken, but we wanted to have this special meeting so that we can continue the discussion. It was part of our meeting 2 weeks ago, and we realized that there's a lot more to come, and we need to discuss this in open session with you all present, and that's why we had this special meeting this evening. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to cover kind of where we come from and where we are today, and then I'm going to hand it over to your legal counsel, and they're going to have some discussions with you. So this is the same slide that some of us have seen before. So this appears what we've agreed on so far. When I say we, I'm legal counsel. One, and the comment was made, no one really wants to get rid of the golf course. Everyone agreed that the golf course facility does need some upgrades and repairs, perhaps an expansion. Also that in 2023, which is the fiscal budget that we're in right now, that the venue tax is already committed to the final bond payment and to some erosion repair. And that in 2024, which is our next budget cycle, there are options that are available for the city that were not possible before, which is why we're having this discussion this evening and past evenings and future evenings. Consideration of the future uses and divisions of the venue tax is really what we need to discuss, and that's why we're here. On the next slide, I believe this is what we have not yet agreed upon. When I say not yet, I mean the council. One is we haven't really determined the advanced slide, Kristen. Ms. Hans, oh, I'm sorry, but they're here with me. Got it. Now we're both in it. Thank you. I don't think we've really discussed or come to a conclusion yet what the end goal is. I don't think that we've necessarily explored all the compromises or the alternatives to get to the end goal. Also, we have put into place a financing plan for repair of the golf course. We haven't fully explored all of the options to proceed with splitting of the tax, reallocating it into or redirecting the venue tax. And then we haven't really even decided on when is the most appropriate time to do that. And then last time, we don't even have a timeline thus far, and hopefully we will, we'll give some direction on how to plan to implement those final decisions that you're going to make. So, what we have discussed, again, this is a repeat from previous discussions, is that we have decided that as a group, we need to memorialize the options that we have available to us. So, recognize the complexity of the issue, try to weed out false information, disingenuous information, misinformation, distracting information, all kinds of information that appears to be polarizing people and perhaps creating some partisanship. We kind of need to weed through all of that so that we are making a well-informed decision. Lastly, we talked about the fact that we need to commit to exploring all of the options, which is why we're here this evening, and I thank you all for agreeing for the workshop. Perhaps spend some more time understanding the challenges of each of the options that we're going to be looking at, and then consider some short-term and long-term consequences and impacts on future generations. I know we're all talking about now, but we have to remember that, as Mr. Rubal said, at some point, none of us will be here. I don't know when that is, I don't think any of us do, but we need to remember that we are having an impact on future generations and future taxpayers as well. So, Mr. Penman did an excellent job giving some background on the golf course, and it is a very complex history. I think that one of the things we can all agree on. So the 1993 bond measure, it failed. It was a joint project between Selma and the developer. That failed. 1993 to 97, parcels were identified for the golf course. 7 parcels were gifted to the city. 7 parcels were gifted to the city, and the city did purchase 1 parcel. In 1997, the measure did pass for the golf course as well as the bonds. They were 25-year bonds with interest-only payments for the first 5 years, which provided $1,000. And then the total bond package in 1997 was $5.93 million, and it had an interest of rounding $5.6 million. So, moving on, we began construction with Granite Golf, and they were the ones that actually constructed and managed the facility. Early on in the construction, there were some issues that put it behind and put it over budget. That was the issue with the Licon Indian, I think they're called Licon Apache Indian tribe. There were some legal issues with them. They claimed that the land was theirs. We also found numerous burial sites on there, and had to bring in a lot of state agencies to do the examinations, which caused a lot of time and delay on the building of the golf course, and a couple of months. So in 2000, the Binford Golf Course and Conference Center opened, and Granite Golf, at that time then by the city, was replaced with Kemper Sports. Kemper actually managed and ran the facility for the city with a contract fee that they got on a monthly basis. The city was responsible for covering all the costs of operating it, as well as the staff and the debt, and so Kemper Sports was paid on top of what was already owed. In 2000 and 2002, that's when the city first understood that they had insufficient revenues. There weren't that many operational shortfalls, but there was already a debt payment that had to be made. And the revenue that was using or pledged to cover that debt was the general fund, right? So now the city is facing a position, well, how do we stop bleeding from the general fund, and what can we do to stop that bleed? And so that's when the 2002 election came into being for the venue tax, and the venue tax was passed. However, even at that time, the amount of funds that were received from the venue tax was not sufficient to cover all of the debt and the management expenses that the city was incurring. Then we moved on to 2005, 2002 to 2005. That's kind of when the city began doing some inter-loans from the general fund to the golf operating for the debt payments and additional repairs and management fees that needed to be made. And again, the venue tax even then wasn't high enough in the city to cover all of those expenses. In 2005, which was a bad year for everybody around Texas, that's when the floods hit, and that's when we got holes. 1911 and 17 got wiped out. At that time, the costs to recover those were estimated about $650,000, I believe it might have come in a little bit more than that. I'm looking at Randy, he's shaking his head. So, we have the same meeting that we have here today. Somebody said we've been here before. You're right, we've been here before. So in 2005, the councilman directed staff at that time to put together some options on what to do with the golf course. That included repairing, selling, leasing out, closing it, transitional uses, half and half uses, and things of that nature. So in 2005, the city did put an RFP out for buyers. All of the RFPs that came back, nobody wants to buy it, they only want to lease it on our behalf again. Well, hello, we've already been through that twice. We went through that with Granite Golf and then we went with Camper Golf. At that time, that was when the city made the decision that they were going to run the golf course themselves and handle it. And so that is when there was some additional interfund loans that were made from the general fund reserves to the golf course operating. But that was to elevate and reconstruct the holes that had been wiped out in the flood because the insurance didn't cover them. Moving up to 2008, I don't know how or why all this happened, but there was a portion of the 1997 bonds that were refinanced, and they were done as 15-year certificates of obligation. The remaining 1997 bond portion was refinanced in 2012. Both have some interest-only payments. Again, I don't understand why, not a finance person, or a bond attorney. And so there were a lot of balloon payments mixed in with those. In 20 and 2023, the golf course operations are at or near break-even. The venue tax has been used in the last 4 or 5 years really to pay for the balloon debt payments. And so when I mean by balloon, one of them was, well, both of them were really just under $500,000. So that's $1 million in the venue tax that went not to golf course operations, but went to pay off the debt service. And remember, the debt belongs to the city, even though the city operates the golf course, the two are intermingled. And then also at that time, there was more damage with erosion that was done to hole 67. And then the remaining money for those years were used to make those specific repairs. So here we are in 2023, and the venue tax the final balloon payment has been made. Now we're repairing the damage that is on hole 8 and 9. And when I say damage, it's not to the holes themselves, it's actually to the drainage system. And so that brings us up today. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the 2002 ballot language because I think we're going to spend a lot of our time this evening having a discussion on that. The venue tax proposition is what established a venue project. And we kind of need to make sure that we're using, when we say golf course, that we're using golf course and venue project intermingled. So when the golf course is paid off, the venue project remains. And I think we need to keep that in mind, that the venue project remains. We call it the golf course, but in the eyes of the law and the finance world, it's still considered a venue project. Also, if the venue project is reallocated away from Olympic Hills, Olympic Hills still remains a venue project. So we have kind of to keep that as we move forward into our discussion with your legal counsel. And then the last thing, and again, this is just a draft estimation on what we think you're trying to get to. We're hoping we'll get a little more clarification on that this evening. That we believe that one of your end goals is to get as much money as possible to the general fund. Whether that be through the interfund loan repayment, through an annual administrative transfer, or implementation of the 2002 ballot language to fund spaces in the parks and park improvements. Also, we believe that one of your end goals is probably to reallocate venue tax to pay for some general city capital improvements. Lastly, we think, and we hope you give us some clarity, that your goal is to improve and maintain the golf course and the event conference center as an investment and an asset of the city. So I guess the question that we need to be asking ourselves as we go throughout the rest of the night is, can we accomplish everything we want without having to go to the expensive election or a re-election 3 years from now or whatever it happens to be? And if we go to election, is there a possibility that we may compound items that have not yet been addressed? So, that's all my comments for now, and so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Clay, and he will introduce himself.
That's correct. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Clay Binford. I'm a bond attorney with the law firm Hall Parker Support, a senior partner in Interfund, representing the city as its bond counsel. With me, I have Rose Kanuski, who is my colleague and is a local elections expert that supports our practice and also provides representative services to the city. I've been doing this exclusively in the space since 2001. I was not involved in the prior history that Ms. Turner went through as we talked about how you got here. But I do have familiarity with the general concepts. We represent many other local government and their approval, expenditure, management of venue tax projects, and expenditure of proceeds and funds. And when I called in to look at something like this, the first thing that I want to see is the background documentation, because we do know that there is a history upon which that documentation was based. But as we interpret it, we have to look at the plain language of the documentation to understand exactly what we would interpret and advise as an independent third party coming in, reviewing and telling you exactly what is the status of your legal condition and how do you have to respect what has been done and apply on the future in accordance with what you agreed to. And we start with that with what is the basic contract with the voters that was put in place in 2022. That is the current election that remains valid and was the basis for not only identification of the project as a venue project, but the source of revenue that we're now talking about. And so we look at this ballot language, which is on the screen in front of you, and I will just read it. It says the adoption of an additional 0.5% local sales and use tax to be used by the city to reimburse the cost of a municipal golf course and conference center to provide for funds for financing of said project, to provide for open spaces for public use in the city of Universal City based on linear parks and improvements, the payment and reimbursement for a municipal conference center and golf course, including related infrastructure, designated said project as required by Chapter 334 Texas Local Government Code for the purpose of financing the venue project. Now that is a lot of words and combined into a very long sentence. And we have to interpret things that you might think are similar, but we have to interpret them as having separate and distinct meanings. As Texas law requires that words are used purposefully and they each carry individual meaning. That means that you don't say the same thing twice in two different ways but mean the same thing. So we have to look at this and say, you said conference center, municipal golf course, linear parks, open space, related infrastructure, all different things. So that tells us that though this revenue stream and project has been primarily focused on a golf course, the ballot language actually provides for significantly greater authorization for the use of that revenue stream and what is designated as a venue project. Under code construction, if a word is not defined by statute, we have to interpret it based on the plain meaning of the word. And that is important because within this ballot language, we have some things that are defined by statute and some that are not. So we rely on the plain meaning in one instance and the statutory definition in another. We have, for example, related infrastructure is a defined term under Chapter 334 of the Local Government Code. So that provides us guidance as to what the inclusion of that term means. The other things, we have to rely upon general meaning of the word and what's in the historical designation of the city for a particular term in this particular context. The next slide. I want to call out to the ballot language. Okay. The related infrastructure definition has not changed since 2000. Since 2002, I'm sorry. And that is important because we would have to look at the law as it existed. The voters approved the proposition as to having controlling interest over this particular issue. And related infrastructure means any store or restaurant, on-site hotel, concession, automobile parking facility, area transportation facility, road, street, water, sewer facility, park, road, on-site or off-site improvement, that relates to and enhances the use, value, or appeal of the venue, including areas adjacent to the venue and any other expenditure reasonably necessary to construct, improve, renovate, or expand the venue, including an expenditure for environmental remediation. And if you remember, the 4 projects that we identified were linear parks, open space, and municipal golf course, a conference center. So when you look at those individual projects and then you pair related infrastructure activities, you look at this laundry list of what that can entail. And that shows you the breadth and scope of what authorized capital expenditures are actually going to fall under this ballot proposition. Next slide. Looking at this and understanding and being educated on some of the history, my personal experience and advice is what I'm providing tonight. The first one that jumps off the page to me is an interfund loan, an intergovernmental borrowing between the general fund to position or to pay for the golf course back in 2005, I believe. That is now a $1.9 million asset of the general fund. If you do not pay that off, and from an accounting perspective, you will have to write that off. You write off as a liability on one side and an asset on the other, which would mean an accounting reduction of your general fund by $1.9 million. In my experience and seeing this in similar circumstances, that is not a prudent management of your expenditure or your assets and your liabilities. So I would tell you that from a prioritization perspective, particularly as you're paying off the existing debt and you have capacity under that revenue stream, before you extinguished it or repurposed it for something else, you need to pay back that interfund transfer with your money. Now what that will do is that will replenish your general fund with actual cash instead of an accounts receivable or an asset to be recovered, turning an illiquid or unavailable asset into a real one that can be deployed for any lawful purpose that you can spend general fund money on. So to me, that is an initial, immediate infusion of cash into your general fund that also improves and enhances the financial position of the city. I think that failure to pay this back would have a negative consequence to the city's financial position, just as you write off a $1.9 million asset and have to realize that in your statement, net financial position of your general fund. So I would say, from my recommendation, that should be probably. Priority 2 would be general fund transfers, and what this means is that you have an asset that is identified as a venue project. It is intended to be self-sufficient and self-supportive, but from my understanding as to what happens is all of the revenue from the sales tax that is attributable to the venue project is transferred over to the golf course, to this project, the conference center. What does not happen is the city does not realize a recoupment of the administrative expenses that it funds from another source, but nevertheless applies that time, effort, resource to the management and operation of the venue project. And what I mean by that is a portion of this Turner's time is spent on managing the golf course. So is other staff of the city. But is there a payback for salaries or for overhead that is attributable to maintaining that staff that is going to be supporting that venue project? If there's not, there should be. The way that we look at this is if you were to get rid of the city completely, you had no additional resources, and you had a standalone project, venue project, and I think that the business analogy is a good one that several members from the audience today have raised. What would that venue project have to pay in the form of services in order to operate? Anything that falls into that category becomes an authorized use of that sales tax revenue stream. The fact that it is paid for by the city out of services that are funded by the general fund means that the cost can be allocated to that project, and a portion of those sales taxes can be returned to the general fund in order to supplement that budget to pay for the time and effort of those employees and that overhead that is allocated to the venue project. This is a quick, easy, appropriate, justifiable, legally authorized expenditure of those sales tax proceeds that will again immediately support your general fund and can be used for other purposes that we'll talk about here in a second. And if you look at this, this slide tells just some ideas as to what City services are funded by the general fund, but are nevertheless applied to the venue project to include finance, public works, project management, insurance, legal, human resources, and payroll, contract management, marketing, and janitorial. Priority 3 then is the golf course and venue project itself. This is a city asset, and I understand that there is a school of thought that you let this survive on its own. There are many services that are provided to communities that are not profitable, but nonetheless carry value because of the benefit that it provides the system. So I think that as long as you have an asset, my personal belief is you have an obligation to maintain that in a safe, usable format that is going to be a requirement for application of capital, whether that be operational revenue or some supporting measure. And that's what this indicates. You have an asset, as long as it's yours, you have an obligation to own, operate, and maintain in a safe and secure fashion. And these are things that have been identified by city staff as are going to be necessary improvements, to include upgrading the fiber to 200 megabytes per second, and replace all computers, separate golf and event activities, relocate and construct golf pro shop, park barn, back courts, expand parking lot, dumpster enclosures, remodel existing building, identify and repair course hazards and liabilities, course equipment, and course grounds. They're in greater detail here, but I won't read every word on this page. Priority 4 would be to exercise your council discretion. Exercise council discretion of using your venue tax as provided in the ballot language, or some of those other things that we talked about. Are there pieces of your general fund that are currently supporting linear parks that could otherwise be spent with venue proceeds that are now excess, or in addition to the amount of the money that's available after paying for these other priorities, if those are in fact your priorities? If you do that and you pay these other things with the venue tax proceeds, then that again frees up more money in your general fund that you can use for other purposes. Venue tax can be used for, we have a 2023 Park and Recreation budget of $950,000, for example. Venue tax could be used for some or all of the park budget, and it can change from year to year depending on the priority of your use. So we put all of this together, we call this a trickle-down effect as to how can the venue tax, under your current authorizations, actually support your general fund and lead to immediate and identifiable solutions to your community for things like street repair. The use of general venue tax proceeds for annual budgetary support of the general fund. So you repay your interfund borrowing, that brings more money into the general fund. You use venue tax proceeds to pay for venue project administrative services historically borne by the general fund. You can pay for other venue projects under the ballot language that we discussed that would again be used to supplement the general fund because you're no longer supporting them with your M&O tax. As a result, you're likely to have a general fund budgetary surplus that you can then use to fund capital items such as street repair on a pay-as-you-go basis. You could also use this to transfer to your INS side to pay for a portion of the debt service if you were to, for example, issue your $30 million of voter-approved debt for street repair, so that you don't have to then increase the ad valorem tax in as much of an amount as you would have otherwise if you didn't have that ability to transfer revenue from your general fund. So it is a way to flow all of this through in order to, what I would call, right-size something that has had a tenuous history of not being overly profitable, even including the revenue stream, to one that reflects the growth of your community and the sales tax that is generated by the 0.5% that is now 21 years old. These are things that can be done immediately. If you want to incorporate them over time, you have that ability. But what it does is it provides you the discretion to use this money on a host of different issues that perhaps before tonight you didn't realize you had here.